Welcome to the dOrg Hot Seat. For those who have been in the space for long enough, you'll remember that once there were two multi-sig contracts. One of them got hacked, twice, and it was so bad that the shadow of another fork was cast over Ethereum. The other remained safe. Not only this, but it evolved. The Safe wallet we know today, formerly known as Gnosis Safe, it is probably one of the most robust pieces of smart contract infrastructure. And around it, there's a growing ecosystem of plugins, apps, and extensions that make it safer to manage or govern crypto assets. Just like you want your crypto wallet improving and evolving all the time, you probably also want your crypto knowledge to be up to date. So hit the subscribe or follow button right now. Sitting on the hot seat, we have Clem and Daniel from SafeCore, who will guide us through the future of safe integrations, account abstraction, and how to use the SDK.
On the call, we have Danny Sanchez and myself working primarily on SafeCore. As a brief introduction to SafeCore, SafeCore is the team within Safe primarily responsible for our developer products. And today I'm happy to walk you through a little bit of the SDK setup we have and our ambitions to grow the core SDK. So I will first present to you like a little bit contextually where we stand in Safe's SDK history, if I may say, and where we're heading to. And after that, Danny will be also presenting a little demo of the SafeCore AA SDK or account abstraction SDK, which is currently our primary focus. So, at first, we could argue that the SafeCore SDK in its early days was primarily a tool for people to build on top of Safe and build custom access control logic. Yeah, originally the SafeCore SDK was primarily tailored towards teams willing to leverage the SafeCore contract and build, custom interface or custom access control logic on top of the Safe, primarily for multi-sig use cases where people would be co-managing a treasury and coordinating, typically a DAO treasury or a similar use case. Then gradually the team built up capacity to also integrate the Safe as a wallet to connect to existing dApps and the whole app ecosystem that Web3 offers through Safe apps. And so for this reason, we introduced the Safe Apps SDK, which effectively allows to have applications connect to the Safe within the Safe wallet interface. And then as we are right now kind of shifting focus from looking primarily at DAO and treasury management use cases to more personal Safe use cases, we're trying to figure out a way where we can empower developers by showcasing and promoting the usage of Safe for personal smart contract accounts usage. And we're doing this by currently looking into integrations we can provide within SafeCore SDK that allow to abstract the complexity of dealing with decentralized systems and more particularly the complexities that come with setting up a smart account. So just on the 1st of March, earlier this month, we announced the release of a series of integrations that we've been working on, namely the on-ramp, on-ramp, off, and relay kits. These kits, we believe, can be very interesting pillars to further grow the offering behind the SafeCore SDK. And we aim to really focus on providing, the right tooling for developers to create Web2-like user experience, while also at the same time supporting new type of use cases, which I can explain in a bit. Also, which is a bit out of the scope for today, but the SafeCore SDK, as I mentioned earlier, is kind of a subset of the different product lines that we have within Core. Typically, we have, the SafeCore API, the SafeCore protocol, and the SafeCore SDK. And in the future, actually already now, we're somehow already investigating how the SafeCore SDK can play a role within the Safe protocol. And that will be done through the exploration of modules. Modules are essentially smart contracts which we can connect directly to the SafeCore contract to extend the logic of the core contract rather than integrations like off-chain integrations that we currently provide. So the intention with this also will be that a lot of the development can then be more community-led than it currently is with the current state of the SDK. So currently, as I mentioned, like we have those 3 new kits that have been introduced to the SafeCore SDK. The protocol kit represents the access to the core contract primarily, and then the on-ramp kit allows developers to quickly integrate with Stripe payment service provider directly for enabling in-app payments within the application. The auth kit is also a kit that will be used to integrate with different authentication mechanism and hopefully other type of signing methods that we can promote, because we are not entangled to have one particular type of signing. I mean, there might be some constraints around gas optimization, but in the future, we hope that we can welcome multiple type of signatures within the SDK and for the core contract. And we also launched the relay kit, which takes care of sponsored and meta transactions, which is a big topic, particularly behind ERC or EIP 4337, which we also intend to support behind this relay kit in the near future. Maybe I'm taking way too much time here. Very briefly, this is what the next integrations are likely going to be and what we're looking into these days. We want to extend and expand the functionalities of the on-ramp kit by providing a set of additional functionalities that currently are not available. Namely, we want to provide the ability for developers to facilitate one-on-one safe deployment only using email and credit cards, so that we can start tapping in more e-commerce retail markets off the back of traditional e-commerce Web2 flows. And then we also want to look into alternatives for people to store their asset without facilitate the off-rail into fiat without having to rely on a centralized exchange. And so for that, we're also talking with different service providers that we would like to integrate in the on-ramp kit. But also another fundamental piece for us, as you will see in the demo, we currently working with Web3 Auth for leveraging multi-party computation and providing a seedless or private keyless user experience. We will be looking at augmenting the functionality and the number of integration behind the auth kit so that we can deliver essentially an experience where someone with a personal safe can set up multiple signers still without having to deal with private keys, but increasing the level of security for the end user. And also our focus right now is also optimizing the current relay integration that we have, which is provided by Gelato, and 2 particular functions that or methods that allow for sponsored and meta transaction. So yeah, I hope this slide gives you a good representation of what we're doing here. And I think I am just now gonna pass it on to Danny before taking on your question. So you will now see a little demo of how this works and how this plays.
So, well, this is a small demo we prepared based on the SDKs that Clem just showed around. He showed them a bit conceptually, and we created like this small application to display a bit the power of the SDKs. So, well, it's ready to be shared. So after the call or during the call, somehow we can share the link so you can play around a bit. So, well, easy to follow. You have some reference links here, GitHub documentation and Discord. So whenever you feel after the demo you have some questions, you can just check documentation or ask on or Discord any doubts you may have. Let's start. The demo is compatible with these chains right now. Let's go with Mumbai testnet, easier for everyone, and it's easy to get funds, not like Gary, that they are crazy to get nowadays. So let's go. First of all, the auth kit. We are going to explain a bit about the auth kit, but there's also some code snippets you can get some inspiration on how it should be used. Also, there's a link to the docs, but let's go hands third on the, yeah, there it comes. Okay, so we are using Web3 auth in the background for this kit. Right now it's the only option possible to grow in the future. For those of you that doesn't know Web3 auth, it enables either Web2 login or Web3 login, so you could connect using Wallet Connect, MetaMask, or any other Web3 wallet, but also you can use traditional Web2 logins. For this example, I'm going to use the Web2 login as it feels something a bit more interesting maybe for this test. I'm going to use a disposable email, so well, not much complication there. For the sake of the test, it's valid. We just need to log in once, and we are using testnet funds, so we are good there. Okay, so after we click on and receive we receive an email on our email inbox. So we just need to verify there. Once the code match, okay, it's all good. Let's take a few seconds, but yeah, there it comes. Right, so now we have connected. We have generated an EOA based on our email provider instead of having to remember the mnemonic. Our email would be enough to handling this owner ID. The owner ID is just a traditional EOA that is generated on this service Web3 auth provides. In the future, there could be more elaborated auth methods like second factor authentication, but as is it for now, it's just one EOA, normal EOA. So well. And on the other hand, we have the Safe account. Here we are showcasing something that is the Safe is not yet created. If we go to this account, this is empty. This is not a Safe yet, because we are anticipating the Safe that is going to be deployed on the address, and we will wait till you want to do a transaction to deploy this Safe and execute the intended transaction. We can continue with the demo, but yeah, you can check these addresses based on the configuration of the Safe. So as we are going to deploy with this owner, we can anticipate the Safe address. Currently, no Matic, no funds, so let's try to continue. Yeah.
One question here. So basically, how the Safe factory has a deterministic approach on the address, which depends on the owner ID. The deployer. Right.
There are more properties, but one of those is the owners. I mean, it's not only one owner; it's all the owner list that you provide. So the configuration for the deploying the Safe, it should include the Safe version, the chain ID where you're deploying. So well, sorry, not the chain ID, the owners, and with and some few other parameters we can check on the smart contract, but that would be getting a bit too deep. It can be checked later. But yeah, regarding if you create the exact same configuration, you should be able to deploy the same Safe address on any different chain. But mainnet, because mainnet uses a slightly different smart contract that doesn't emit events. But on all the other L2, we can get the same address if we use the exact same owner configuration. So this is possible.
Thank you.
Perfect. Then let's continue. Here we have a part of the demo that I won't be able to test, but I invite you to test it afterwards if you come to it. And that will be the on-ramping. On-ramping right now it's limited to Polygon Mumbai, and it's only possible to execute if you are connecting from an IP on the United States, because the provider we could create the proof of contact with, Stripe, it's only enabling US-based connections. It will be fairly simple to use. Just select the amount. It's limited to $10. It doesn't matter which amount you set, because to keep the faucet safe, but there were some problems before this call, so I'm not going to risk to have these issues. You have to use exactly this data, and it will find some USDC or Matic Polygon Mumbai, sorry, on the Safe you are going to deploy. As on the previous step, you have some code snippet to get inspiration on how you should look like, but on the documentation, we'll have all the rest of the information needed to make this work. So let's get to the next interesting step, Relay Kit. Relay is a feature that we have been missing for long on Safe, and we are now trying to solve that. And as for that, we are providing on the SDK an integration with Gelato that we can test here. We are improving the documents right now, but we are going to add more information based on some developers that they asked for some feedback, and well, we are going to do that. So the code snippet is a bit shorter than it should because it will involve a bit more effort. But if you check the demo example, you should be able to see code that is functional and ready to use on your tests. Let's first of all request a bit of magic to this safe because we are going to deploy already with funds on the safe. So let's just paste this address here. Nice. So we should be receiving some Matic funds. Perfect. So the address is still not a safe, but we already have some funds. And now let's use the magic of the relay not only to deploy the safe, but also to send a mock transaction. This is an example transaction. You could do anything you would like already with your safe. But for the example, we are going just to transfer to the on-safe 0.01 Matic. So let's just send the transaction. And the safe will be deployed. And we will have a transfer of 0.01 Matic to the on-safe. So the transaction is already ongoing. Few seconds we will be seeing the transaction appearing. Success. So in a few seconds, yeah, success. Transaction is getting there. And now we can see with these few seconds to Polygon scan to update that a safe was deployed. And we have a transaction. Skip them a few seconds now. Yeah. Perfect. So right now you can see here that we executed a transfer, and well, we also paid the relay the funds. This will be the payment for the relay for the transaction that they executed. Here in the left side, we have the create two. This is the transaction that deployed the safe on that address. This is the address that we anticipated, right? Yeah, here you have it. Now it is detected as a no-safe proxy contract, so we have our safe deployed with being the owner, the EOA we got from your kit, and well, we didn't have to add funds to the owner. Funds on the safe were enough to deploy the safe and to create a transaction. We can even try to figure out the transaction if I'm correct. So we can send another transaction now. Instead of creating the same, we'll only do the transfer. So it will be a cheaper transaction and simple one. But well, very convenient that we didn't have to populate the owner account with any funds, and we got our safe deployed, and already we are able to transact with it. Well, one of the limitations here is that currently Polygon Mobile is not supported on the web interface, so we cannot show this on the web interface, this is safe. But if you test with any other chain, that I encourage you to do so after this call, Berly, Gnosis chain, or Polygon, production Polygon mainnet, it should be possible. So well, this regarding the account abstraction. Just to mention, we have an ongoing hackathon that you can also find the link here. With heavy prices, you still have 1 week ongoing. So, well, you are welcome to submit some proposals using the account abstraction SDK. And for any other questions about this code, we always have our Discord open for you. So, thank you.
Right on. Thank you so much. Okay, cool. So that was a very cool demonstration on what is the roadmap going to be and what is the SDK looking like. So I think we can open the floor now to the members of dOrg. And I'm going to start with a question from Leo, since we've been talking about Web3 auth and how to create them using the SDK. So Leo, you want to ask you a question?
Yeah, sure. Thanks. Thank a lot for the talk. It was really interesting. It's a great idea to, on-ramp obviously with the email accounts. I'm just wondering what actually happens if you lose your access to your email account. I mean, is your basically you create a set of keys through your account, and where would they be stored?
Currently, it's a problem that if you lose access to your email, it shouldn't be something easy. It's more easy to lose a mnemonic, but yeah, it's something that can happen, that you lose access to your email. So in that sense, yeah, the key could be considered compromised or lost the same way as a mnemonic. We don't have a solution for that yet, although we are working on account recovery. Yeah, the suggestion that I can add to recover your account is okay. Instead of having a safe with only one key being Web3 auth, add more keys. You can use different providers. You can use traditional Web3 keys, mnemonics, ledgers, so whatever. So in the case you lose access to your Web3 auth account, your email account, you can remove that as owner on your safe, and you still would be able to access your funds. So if you split in different technologies the owners of your safe, that should solve the issue, right?
Right. Thanks.
But
So
still, we would like to work with providers in not allowing recovery.
Yeah, I would like to add to that like the primary risk that you have right now with using Web3 auth for counterfactual deployment and then assigning Web3 auth as the single owner of the safe is mostly a counterparty risk of Web3 auth going down, right? If you're working with a service provider that provides you with multi-party computation to generate the key, the assumption is that you are way less likely to lose access to your Gmail account than you are to lose a mnemonic, right?
Right.
However, the limitation is that if Web3 auth defaults for one reason or another, and you haven't stored the private key, which you can still retrieve from Web3 auth at any time, then in this case you have a problem. So right now, developers and the SDK is modular enough that that initial flow can be used to onboard users, and then you can also set up an interface for them to add additional signers or owners of the safe, where you can set the threshold for transactions still at 1, and then you de-risk Web3 auth as a single point of failure by adding like additional MPC or additional authentication methods, right? Doesn't have to be an MPC, could also just be traditional EOA. And yeah, we're looking to offer like a diverse, like I mentioned in the little presentation, a diverse set of ways for you to actually be able to set owners without having this trust risk.
Cool. Thanks a lot.
A follow-up question on this. If Web3 auth, if there's the ability of retrieving the private key from them at some point, doesn't that make them honeypots for all of these private keys of all of these controllers of safes? Isn't that a huge kind of like relinquishing the custody to Web3 auth?
So not really, because the one of the principles behind Web3 auth is multi-party computation, meaning that Web3 auth itself only holds a share of the private key that combines with your local storage, allows for the private key to be generated. So only you as a user, provided that you authenticate yourself using social auth or any other means that they provide in their interface, allows for the reconstruction of this private key. But Web3 auth itself as an entity does not hold any private key.
Right, gotcha. Okay. Thanks for the clarification. Also, a follow-up on this. Maybe you have an example of how does the UX work on the side of the user, because right now we're used to using sort of like this MetaMask and Frame, and they all have like a similar flow when something will pop up. But with Safe, if you're not holding your private key, how does the signing work?
As the current state, it should be implemented. The SDK provides the functionality to connect you to Web3 auth and to transmit the events between Web3 auth and your application. So in that sense, you should create your own model because it would be triggered. The developer should provide the model triggering the signing of the transaction, as it is as today. We are considering to improve that, providing a default one, but that's not yet provided with the SDK. So the SDK assumes that the developer would provide the model signing, and we are just right now the intermediate step of handling the key with Web3 auth. But of
Fantastic.
course, a direct approval would be okay. Let's provide a default model. We already thought about that. Very likely that will come on next steps on the evolution of the SDK.
Yep, gotcha. Okay, so Cesar had a question on the relayers part.
Yeah, so I was curious if you have EIP 4337 integration in your roadmaps of this SDK, and if so, how do you envision it replacing the current relayer solution, which is a Gelato?
Okay, I can take that.
Please.
Yeah, currently with the current firmware 4337, we are not yet compatible with that. It's not only because of the SDK implementation, but the smart contracts of the Safe would need some tweak to be able to support them. It's something that we are considering and we are looking forward to do, but as it is right now with 1.3.0 version of the smart contracts, it's not possible to use the current implementation of 4337. As this said, we don't consider that we need to enforce any technology on the SDK. Of course, we needed to start somewhere, and for example, on the relay we selected Gelato, but that doesn't mean that we are not willing to implement all the providers, even it's 4337 or any other provider that we come with a relay solution. So whenever we find a good relay solution, the SDK will be open to and have the modularity to be able to be compatible with different packages, and we wouldn't discard Gelato because we are now compatible with 4337. The idea is to be compatible with both, and you as a developer can decide whether you can use 4337 or you can use Gelato or you can use any other provider that you like most. And I think this would be the key for not tying you to a technology or centralizing you on a technology. You can decide which technology you prefer.
Yeah, I think if I can just extend what you've said, at the very beginning of the ideation sessions we had for the SDK, we were trying to think a lot in terms of design principles for the SDK, and one of them was modularity for developers and flexibility for users, meaning that we believe that depending on your appetite for self-custodianship and as a user, you should be able to create the key management setup that you wish for yourself. For instance, relying on multi-party computation with social logins or not. And similarly, for developers, we also want to create the kits that were previously shown to you with modularity in mind. So that means that the auth kit, just like the relay kit, are not vendor lock-ins that we try to force onto developers, but instead we want to use them as growing libraries of alternative ways of dealing with problems to best fit your particular use case. So that's very important for us.
Awesome, thank you.
Great. Okay. So maybe one last question on the technical side, and then we can go a little bit more onto the strategy. So, Jure, do you want to ask your ZK question?
Sure. So totally unrelated to account abstraction, but equally, I think, as interesting. Do you have any plans on integrating ZK proofs? So, for example, like being able to sign transactions anonymously, vote on transactions and stuff like that?
We do have privacy as a theme that we would like to tackle within the context of the SDK. However, right now it hasn't been prioritized for the coming quarter. I think the space of ZK is very interesting, but I'm not positioned to tell you into details like what kind of implementation we would be looking at. If you have recommendations, by the way, for Safe or ideas that you would like us to look into, please do share. And also similarly, I would like to jump on what you said that maybe ZK is not so related to account abstraction. I would actually argue that it somewhat is, because to an extent, if we want to penetrate the mass market, we might also have to comply with a set of privacy regulations that normal organizations and systems have to deal with. And currently, maybe blockchains and decentralized systems as they are do not allow for that. So I do think ZK somewhat falls very nicely behind account abstraction as a theme or as a concept.
That's a great point. Thank you.
Beautiful. Following with you, Yura, you had another question, and I'd like to pivot that on more like the strategy questions that we have. You had another question on why the shift.
Yeah. So in my mind, like Safe was always the perfect, multi-sig wallet. Focus was always on the group aspect, being able to sign transactions and vote on that in your wallet, in your safe. So why the switch from like the group signing to like more personal use cases?
So we right now, like in our strategy, we have two kind of product portfolios. One of them is Safe Wallet, the other one is SafeCore. And so you can assume that Safe Wallet will still be here for multi-sig owners, and that we will keep on improving its functionalities for the initial use case of the multi-sig, which typically involves multiple parties managing a treasury, but could also be used for personal usage. Actually, also many people use them for personal usage. I think the primary reason for this shift of attention, at least, is that we do realize that Safe is somewhat the most trusted piece of infrastructure on Ethereum, at least at the smart contract level. The contract has shown to be robust over the past years, and so it makes sense for us to explore how we can actually scale the adoption of the contract to tailor it more to personal usage, and how we can augment its functionalities by actually plugging any logic to it, because it's also a smart contract wallet by default. So it was only a very, I think, natural evolution on our side, and we do realize that actually the value proposition of the multi-sig is somewhat already a market fit. So in this context of account abstraction, it is a bit more of a venture that we are taking a bet on, that we can actually empower users and also facilitate the onboarding of new users into Web3, leveraging the Safe stack. So, but does that answer your question, or does that better give you a better understanding of how we're thinking about this?
A bit, yeah. So it's more like you're more focused, I guess, on adoption, and the best way to get that is from like personal use cases. Yeah.
In a way, how many DAOs can you get, and how many individuals can you get? Right? You get a 100x or 1,000x more target public that are there, maybe with less value locked in them, but a lot more interesting in terms of the transaction volume as well. Yeah, you mentioned that the Safe is, I mean, one of the staples. Like it's extremely robust. It has been there since forever, and other multisigs were not that lucky and have not proven so resistant. And what you guys do to try to go mass market now, I think if I want to go with the hands of a particular wallet, that's got to be you guys. That's going to be the Safe. So how can you tell us a little bit more about this mass market strategy that you were mentioning? You were mentioning that you're planning integration with traditional e-commerce or even commerce or even credit cards. Is there anything you can tell us on that?
Yeah, sure. Well, first, I'm happy to hear that you will go for a safe wallet, and that you do trust the stack, just like we do. On tackling on the difference between addressing the dark market and the mass market, you're right. There's a big difference here. I guess one of the core, pun intended, ideas behind SafeCore SDK is also to essentially enable and unlock new use cases towards the mass market that potentially haven't been explored yet. And what I mean by this is that I feel like around the current account abstraction narrative, there is a risk that we just simply reproduce an echo chamber among our fellow, crypto enthusiasts, and where we assume that simply by improving user experience, we will onboard, the next 100 million or the next, billion users for those of us who are most optimistic. I actually think that we should design those systems and we should think of account abstraction not so much as a way to onboard in the existing space, but instead as a way to get access to new markets and to piggyback off existing, user flows by creating touch points for Web2 users with decentralized databases. And so in this context, I think it's very interesting to think of the SDK and particularly also our approach, like you mentioned with payments, for instance, to try and see how we can most easily convert Web2 users to someone owning a smart contract account and then ultimately being able to benefit from what the industry already offers. But so I think it's also quite interesting for us to think in terms of e-commerce, and also maybe one of the reasons why we're currently working with top tier organizations that integrate with us. It's because they have this reach, and we do want to kind of create. My view on this is that we should theoretically somewhat create a Trojan horse where the systems that we design become somewhat invisible. It should be invisible for an end user that they're actually dealing with the decentralized systems, and we should create value propositions around providing touch points to decentralized systems to users in those existing conversion flows that make up what e-commerce is. And so e-commerce is just one idea of it, but theoretically, right, like nothing prevents the world from accumulating their payment receipts on the blockchain, right? And if we start doing that, then there's a lot of interesting interoperability questions that then can be and use cases that then can be explored. So I think there's going to be many use cases that are probably gonna be able to be executed on. And personally, as someone who joined the space back when utility tokens were a thing, I still strongly believe that we can effectively turn a lot of the services and the products we use into somewhat cooperatives, and that we can create interesting incentivization and shared ownership models of services we use online. I think more and more, very concrete use cases will pop up, and use cases that so far the industry and hasn't been able to crack. So this is how I'm kind of drawing the line in between what I call mass market and e-commerce versus what we're currently designing for, which I think sometimes can be a problem, knowing that crypto is a niche that maybe has suffered the glass ceiling effect.
Yeah, I think a lot of people in this call do get either all or at least all that they get from dOrg is on the blockchain already in terms of salary. So integrating with, and we all have to do a step to pay our rent, right? We all need to off-board, off-ramp, and then we can start going to the supermarket, right? So in Denver, I saw a credit card that would help in that regard. Is that something public or?
Yeah, so we are exploring right now the integration in the SDK of Monerium. Monerium, effectively, I think there's also other service providers currently doing that, but allow us to attach an IBAN account to an Ethereum or safe address and effectively off-ramp to fiat currencies in cash without requiring you to have money staying even for some time in a centralized exchange, right? So I think this falls very nicely also behind the whole narrative that we can benefit from with social Silicon Valley Bank, not social Valley Bank, Silicon Valley Bank, and the idea that we should minimize the trust that we have in institution, and more particularly, I think incentivizing people to have their own personal treasuries on chain is a good idea. And Monerium, which I think also was at ETH Denver, is one of the very interesting projects that essentially issues a stable euro token against deposits, and then allow for users to directly get their bank account credited from their safe. So yeah, we are already looking into this, and actually that's something that I think, as it was somehow hinted on the presentation, so it's something we are working on. So all of you guys can have a easier, stress-free life.
I'm looking forward for that. And with that, we've reached the end of our time, but I would like to thank you so much for coming here and giving us this amazing presentation. I think we got some ideas, some very interesting ideas, especially on the ZK side. I think you mentioned that this is something that you'd like to explore and you're open to ideas. And I think dOrg has quite a detachment of people here that are really looking into ZK. So maybe that's something that we could move forward at some point. We'll be happy to look into that. Thank you so much, and have an excellent future with the SDK.
Thank
you.
for inviting us.
Bye.
Have a great one.